Welcome, everyone. I'm Mariquita Solis, the live stream host of all-creatures.org. All-creatures.org was founded in 1998 by Pastor Frank Hoffman and his first wife, Mary, and launched as the pioneer website in the United States for faith-based animal rights veganism. Today, led by our executive director, Tams Nicholson, we exist for all people seeking current animal rights, vegan resources, and offer decades of free animal rights and vegan content, including a huge repository of vegan sermons and Bible commentaries, animal rights strategies, free vegan authored books, recipes, upcoming events around the world, and the works of various vegan authors, poets, and artists. We host current sites for almost 20 vegan and animal rights organizations, including Stop Crush, Unparalleled Suffering, and the Committee to Abolish Sports Hunting. We also maintain nearly 25 archival sites from animal rights vegan activism of past decades. The bottom line is that we work to unite compassionate and empathetic humans across the globe from the past and present who honor the dignity of each and every creature so that all beings thrive on a flourishing planet Earth. So today we are excited to welcome John Oberg as our featured guest. John is an animal advocate dedicated to making the world a kinder place for animals by utilizing the power of social media. A vegan since 2009 and full-time animal activist since 2012, he became an independent animal advocate in 2018, funded through individual donations, focusing on amplifying pro-animal content in the digital space. Previously, he served as the director of new media for the Humane League and as director of communications for Vegan Outreach. In his decade of experience in social media advocacy, he has made over 100 media appearances and has accumulated 250,000 followers. His posts have been seen over 1 billion times, and he has directly heard from thousands of people who have been influenced by his work. So welcome, John. I'm so excited to see you here. Thank you for
Mariquita,
joining.
thank you so much for the invitation. It's an honor to be here to speak with you about animal protection work.
Well, we are. I'm ready to learn, and I think everyone watching will be ready to learn from you because you have. It sounds like you have so much experience, and you're really out there. And what you've done is amazing, and that's what we're here to do. Is really um, celebrate those who are making an impact. So I'd love to start out with hearing your story, John, about your vegan history. When did you become a vegan, and as a little boy, were you more drawn to animals than most children, or how was that growing up?
I always loved animals. Animals have always held a special place in my heart, and it was actually a story that my mom used to tell me, in which I learned of my compassion from a young age. Apparently, I was still in diapers and I was crawling around the floor, and across the room, my cat rolled off the couch and fell onto the floor, and she was fine, but I was very concerned. And my mom told me that as fast as I could, I crawled across the floor and just to make sure she was okay. And I got over and I started petting her to make sure she was okay. So apparently, it's always been in me. My mom really instilled a sense of compassion for animals in me, and taught me to speak up for the vulnerable, to protect animals because they were so vulnerable at the hands of humans, and that we should do everything we can to protect them. And so it was actually my mom and I who, uh, my mom really instilled this sense of compassion in me, and it was actually a, um, uh, I'll tell the story real quick about my first entry into animal advocacy. And I don't know, 10 or 11, and it was the late 90s, and my mom and I were pretty poor, and in the state of Michigan, if you return an aluminum can to the grocery store, you get 10 cents. And so we would go to a local park, and in Michigan where we lived, and we would go to these trash cans in this park, and we would pull the trash cans out of the trash cans to make ends meet. And we do this in the early mornings when there's nobody around, nobody at all. It was just like mist and dew, and um, it was dawn. It was really pretty out, but the only beings who were around and awake at that time were deer, and we love these deer. We bonded with them. We gave them names, and we were very friendly with them. And then one day we learned that these deer were going to be hunted, even though they'd been previously protected for generations. And so we were so heartbroken by this, and taken aback. So we decided to. Well, I didn't decide anything. I would have just been sad about it and not thought to do anything. But my mom said, Johnny, we're not going to rest on our laurels. We're going to do something about this. And so we started protesting outside the park with these big homemade signs that my mom made. It said, "Being cruel isn't cool," and stop the hunt. We had local media attention. I spoke in front of the Department of Natural Resources um, meeting as a very nervous, like 9 or 10 year old, and unfortunately, our cries fell on deaf ears, and the hunts continued, and we were, heartbroken about this. But one night, we did, sneak. We we kind of snuck in after hours to warn the deer of a hunt, and so we started howling, and we howled until until we really notified the deer that danger was near. And we found out later that almost no deer were killed that day. And this was an experience that really taught me that when injustice is happening, you stand up and you do something about it. And it might not be the um, you might not be able to stop all injustice and all cruelty towards animals, but what you can do, you do. And that really taught me that you stand up for animals. And so it was a number of years later that I got involved with animal advocacy full time.
I love that story, and it's so true. Even if it's one life, even if one life is saved, it's that life is very important. And the way you did this as a young child is amazing, and to have a compassionate mother, that's beautiful. I mean, it's a tremendous blessing. And so, when did you become vegan? And was your mother ever vegan?
My mom and I both were eating animals for a very long time, and it was in 2009 when I was like 21, I believe. I went vegan, and I watched. So I went vegetarian on principle, based on a conversation I had with somebody where they said if I loved animals, I probably shouldn't be eating them. So I went vegetarian on principle. Then I watched this film called Earthlings, and I learned about factory farming and also the cruelty in dairy farming and egg laying hens that they had to endure. So I went vegan after that and got involved with activism right away. And it was one of these forms of activism that I would do would be to go to public places and hand out leaflets. And these leaflets talked about the ways in which animals are being abused and how we could try and make a better world for animals. And my mom actually, I gave her one of these leaflets one day, and we were going for a ride, and um, she was in the passenger seat, and it was quiet for a while. And then I hear sniffling, and I look over. My mom's got some tears running down her face, and she says, "Johnny, I just can't do it anymore. I can't eat animals anymore." And so she didn't eat animals anymore for the rest of her life, for the next 5 years until she passed away.
That's beautiful. Wow, you were very blessed to have a mother like that.
I do
And
feel very lucky. It was, unfortunately, it was only 28 years, but it was 28 years that were full of lots and lots of love and adventure.
yeah, you never know anyone's. I mean, how their journey is going to be, right? Unfortunately, it's not A to Z. I mean, I guess that's fortunate. It would be kind of boring if it was A to Z, but everyone has their own journey. So, and that's wonderful that you had a mother that helped you go on the right path. So, and what about when you became vegan? Did you have other friends or did you have support then?
So when I went vegan in 2009, fortunately, I was in a relationship with someone who also went vegan at the same time as me. And luckily for me, she was a great cook, and so the transition was a little bit easier. Neither of us had any vegan friends um, at the time, but I did get involved with activism right away, and through that, I found a community. We both found a community of amazing people who were, had a very similar mindset to us. And this was in Phoenix, Arizona. I went to Arizona State University, and it was great. And I definitely recommend to all new vegans out there to find community. Community is super important in terms of making sure you um, can go vegan and stay vegan for the long haul, because it's important to be vegan for the rest of your life, not just for the next, you know, 3 years or 3 months.
Right. Very true. So, how does the peace of not eating creatures manifest in your life today?
Yeah, so I just think about animals all the time, and I think about how I can make the best impact. And I've known for a long time that the single biggest way that a human impacts animals is through our food choices. So while, none of us would, kick a stray dog or, cause any harm to animals purposely, it is through our food choices that we are indirectly causing a lot of harm. And so I decided 15 years ago that that was not for me. That was not something I wanted to participate in. I wanted to withdraw my support. And I knew that this was a lifelong decision. And so not one time have I ever reconsidered. This is a lifestyle I've chosen, and it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. And I will be vegan until the day I die.
Wonderful. That's great to hear. We know that you are very committed, and I can feel that commitment when I talk to you. You seem very strong. Were you always like this strong persona, John?
Well, it's very kind of you, Marikita. I really appreciate that. And I would say that when I was younger, I wasn't naturally strong, and it was over time that I recognized the value, especially the value that using your voice can have for animals, and that the animals don't have many people in their corner. They actually have the vast majority of society actively working against them through their food choices. And so, while most people agree that animals deserve compassion and consideration and respect and wouldn't abuse an animal themselves, most people are also actively abusing animals. And so, I recognized for a long time that because of this odd dichotomy where you have the vast majority of people believing one thing, but then acting in a way that's completely counter, that it's important for me to use my voice and to try and speak up for animals, and of course to do so in a way that resonates well and is received well. It's not just important to speak in general; it's important to speak in a way that's actually impactful and effective in terms of winning hearts and minds. Because we don't want to just win arguments and debates; we want to actually win people to our side to create a better world for animals.
Right. I love that you said hearts and minds. You're right. I mean, we can debate all day, but if we don't really touch hearts, then we don't want just a clash. And
Exactly.
yeah, and so what about if somebody was watching and they say, I'm scared to talk, I'm scared people don't listen, and I'm not like John. Look at him. He's not afraid to talk. What would you say to that person, John?
Yeah, well, everybody can help in their own way. I look at vegan advocacy and creating a better world for animals as a village, and that everybody plays their own role in this village. And whether your role is on the front lines, speaking directly to consumers and the public, or whether it's in the back, a different part of the village doing some other really crucial part, it is just as crucial. I know lots of donors who support the movement through donations. And, while they recognize the value of activism, they don't want to do it themselves. They don't they don't have an interest in doing it themselves, maybe. So they might use their funds to support others who are doing really good work. I think about somebody who follows me on Twitter who really loved what I did, and he actually wanted to do it himself, and he started to, and he realized that's just not a good efficient use of his time, so he started donating to me to make my work more capable and able. So it was, everybody can help in their own way, and that could look like so many different things. The ways to help animals and to help create a kinder world for animals, especially farm animals, through veganism is boundless, and people just gotta figure out their niche and roll with it.
That's very good advice to give. We don't all have, well, we can't all be on the front lines because we need people on the back, in the middle. We need all sorts of different
Exactly.
voices. So, yes. All right. Well, let me ask you this. What's your most memorable experience so far of your vegan lifestyle? Maybe a change, someone who had a great impact on you?
Mm, that's a good question. I do animal advocacy on social media all the time, and it's my full-time job essentially is doing vegan advocacy on social media, primarily Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and soon expanding to other platforms like TikTok and YouTube Shorts. And so, in my efforts, I am often hearing from people who have been impacted by my work. But I will think back to a message I received on Instagram a while back, and this person informed me that they started following me on. Actually, I'm sorry, they messaged me on Twitter, and they told me, and they're in the UK, and they told me that they started following me on Twitter, and they were really inspired by my content, and they said that they went vegan because of my tweets, and then through their them being vegan, they influenced their family, and their parents are now vegan, and their brother and their sister and their brother's family are all now vegan, and many of them follow me on Twitter now, and it's quite amazing to see that snowball effect. And I think it's really important to recognize here that while I'm lucky that I got word from this person who I inspired, the vast majority of our impact that we make on a daily basis, we are never going to hear the actual results. We're never going to see or learn about the actual results. But I promise you, if you are using your voice for animals and you are taking action for animals, you absolutely are making a similar difference like the one I made with this individual and their family.
That's very important. That's a very important point because a lot of times people say, I'm not making a difference, but we don't know what's going behind the scenes. And a lot of people might not want to admit it. They might be, I've talked to people that said, there's a lot of vegans that come, but they don't admit it. They're vegans in secret, right? So we have to just keep the faith that we are, and it is 100% true. We are making change. We might not see the change, but we are making a difference, right? It takes time to overcome this programming that we have learned as in society as children, that some animals are worthy and some are not. And how do you go about telling people, what's the message there between the two different thoughts of animals? I mean, what's the best way to communicate that all animals are equal to people that say no, they're not? People that say these were meant to be eaten. And then we have, many religious groups who say, oh, well, it says here in their Bible or the book that they follow that it's okay. How do we combat that?
People are always going to be looking for validation to excuse their behavior because people don't want to change. Change is hard. It's very easy to just keep doing the same thing forever. And eating animals is incredibly ingrained in society and normal from the moment we're born. And despite it actually being a very strange, unnecessary action, it is something that is quite normal in society. And therefore, we have to accept people where they are and understand that we need to get people to, move along the spectrum between standard Western diet and veganism. The more we can get them to move along the spectrum, the better. And so it's really important to, um, you know, uh, meet people where they are. And for that reason, I take this approach that is not judgy. I'm never name calling. I'm never actively, intentionally being rude to people about why they should go vegan and why they should stop abusing animals through their food choices. I think it's, again, really important to win hearts and minds, not arguments and debates. And so, for that reason, I really value teaching people, um, getting people to just think about animals differently. I do much of my work on social media, and this is often, some of the work I'm doing is getting people to see a different side of animals. So, on one hand, I'm getting them to see the cruel behavior that's happening in animal agriculture and on factory farms where hens are egg laying hens are kept in cages so small they can't spread their wings, or um, you know piglets are getting their teeth clipped without painkillers, and so on. And I try to I try to showcase this in a way that resonates with people, but doesn't make people feel judged. But I'm also trying to show people a different side to animals, farm animals specifically, that they otherwise wouldn't see, like a cow playing with a giant ball, or a piglet, one brother carrying hay to his other brother because his other brother can't move, like he's immobile. So he's helping his brother out. I'm trying to show people the sides of animals that most people don't get to see. And while certainly some people will go vegan directly because of one of those pieces of content, I am at the very least chipping away at the walls that people have up between themselves and opening their hearts and minds to the concept of eating and living in a way that is more compassionate, like by going vegan.
Well, yes, and what you're saying is there are many good points, but the meeting people where they're at is very important. And we can't force people. And I love that you're saying you're not making them feel bad. You're not shaming them. You're very aware. I mean, that's very mindful activism, and realizing that when we do shame people and make them feel guilty, then we're just pushing them away. So,
Totally.
John, what about if you're with your social media? I know I get a lot of times people feel frustrated because of hecklers, or do people calling or making fun of them, or saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go eat a steak now. You just made me, really want to go eat a hamburger." Now, how do you deal with that? And you get a lot of that.
So, I would call these people trolls. So, trolls are people who are essentially just trying to get under your skin. They usually exist on social media. I mean, people could theoretically troll anywhere, but most trolling happens on social media because people can hide behind anonymity and behind their screen, maybe on the other side of the world, or the other side of the country, and so that's where a lot of trolling happens. Now, it's important to note and be aware of the fact that trolls don't really matter that much. And in fact, if you are attracting trolls to your posts on social media, it's actually a good thing. It's a sign that you're succeeding. And it is worth noting that when people are trolling with your posts, like leaving negative comments on your posts, like the one you just said, or like a picture of a piglet and it says bacon, this is actually increasing the engagement of your post, which is telling the algorithm, that social media platform, hey, this post should be seen by more people. So they are actually helping your cause. Now, when it comes to actually engaging with them and actually how to feel about it, so for one, I would say as far as feeling about it, I would say don't take it to heart. People are just doing this because they are. Um, it's for one, they're actually probably somewhat empathetic, and this is just kind of like their way of it's like a defense mechanism. I would say a lot of people don't actually believe the things that they're saying. They're just saying it to kind of get under your skin. And also, like, you know, the vast majority of people don't feel the way that they are. It just stands out in your head because you get 10 compliments and one negative thing about you said about you. That one negative thing stands out more than others. So when it comes to these trolls, after saying negative things to you about your post, that stands out a lot more. But the vast majority of people who see your message are actually do have open hearts and open minds. So it's really important to keep that in mind. But I will say, as far as engaging with them, I would say it's not really worth your time and energy. Your time and energy is much better spent elsewhere on people whose hearts and minds you actually can win over. And there are a lot of people out there who do have open hearts and open minds.
Yes, they are. There are a lot of people out there that are willing to listen. And so, well, let me ask this about if I wanted to develop a lot of followers or get a big following, because so many of us are really trying to do this so we can be a voice for animals, what would you suggest? What's like the first step to do that?
Well, I'd really recommend figuring out which platform you want to be active on, or platforms. I would recommend 2 to 3 platforms that you focus most of your energy on. So figure out once you figure out that, figure out your niche, where you best belong. If it's a religious community, if you're part of a religious community, I'd recommend looking to see if there are already existing religious communities of your particular religion and interest, who are active for the animals in certain social media platforms. Um, and I would look at others who you like, or who you discover that you like, and see how you could speak like them, and advocate like them. That would be a great way to get to get more followers and start building a community. And it's worth noting, you don't need a massive following to make a difference. You mentioned in my bio at the beginning, the number of followers I've accumulated. I have about, I don't know, 250,000 to 300,000 currently across all platforms. But you could have, 100, and you can still make a really big impact. You can just, you know, you one vegan making one other person vegan is still, that's a huge win. It's a huge win, and you shouldn't discount the importance of that. So don't look at it as all or nothing. Like, either you make zero impact, or you only make an impact if you have hundreds of thousands of followers. You can absolutely make a big impact even with a small following. And as you start with your advocacy, a following will build over time, assuming you are, putting in effort to do it effectively.
Well, that's good to know because most people say, I mean, that they haven't changed anyone, but again, we don't know what's really happening behind the scenes or when people are ready. And one person, they would say, I've only changed one person, and that's a big failure. So I'm loving that you're saying that. What about,
Absolutely. Like I was talking about earlier, like, you are absolutely making a difference, and you just don't know the impact that you are making. Maybe if you're listening to this right now, you can think about the person or organization or whatever that made you go vegan, maybe the documentary. And have you ever reached out to that person and told them this? Odds are you haven't. You are absolutely making an impact. And I would say, like, well over 90%, probably 99% of the impact that you're making, you will never actually know about.
that's very true because when my brother showed me Meet Your Meat, that was the first part of my journey, and I don't even know where he got that from. So, that person, whoever, did probably, I'm sure they don't know that transformed my life, and it makes a lot of sense what you're saying. So,
Yeah.
John, what about your like friends? A lot of people feel like I can't get my friends or family to change, and then that signifies that they're a failure. What would you say about that?
Well, ideally, you'd focus more on the general public and strangers, because it can be tricky to try and influence your friends and family. Um, because when you start having these conversations with them, they can often feel judged, and that is a really tough place to start a conversation from. And for that reason, I actually don't advocate to my friends and family. I just try to be a good representative of veganism, and then when they are interested, they will talk to me about it, and I will discuss it. I will tell them, "Oh yeah, this is vegan," and then they might say, "Oh really? What's it made of?" And I'll say, "Oh, it's made of this," and I'll explain to them, and they might ask me about farm animals and how they're treated and so on. And I'm definitely always ready to go, but I'm not going to just randomly just like um, go on some rant with my family members or my close non-vegan friends out of the blue, because I think that's a tough place to start a conversation from. Luckily, with social media, you can actually impact a lot of people, the general public especially, about when you're talking about these animal issues. But also, you still can influence your friends and family by posting about these issues and just doing it like in a general sense, not targeting any one individual. So obviously, if you're doing this verbally, if let's say you're hanging out with a group of 5 of your friends, you're not really just going to be speaking just generally. But with social media, you can just speak generally. Like, I'm so happy I went vegan when I learned about the ways in which pigs are being mistreated. Or I'm so happy I saw this documentary, Meet Your Meat, because it really had this big impact on me. Nobody can be like, why are you targeting me? Because you're not targeting them individually. You're just saying it in general. And so that's one reason I really think social media is great, because you can kind of get away with influencing your friends and family, but not doing so in such an aggressive way that might put people on the defensive.
Very true. And what would you say about people that are like, I'm cutting off my friends, I'm cutting off my family because I can't stand to be around these hypocrites?
I would say that's the opposite of what you want to do. I think it's really, really important to maintain close friendships and familial ties. It's really problematic if you are cutting yourself out of that equation, and it's really bad for your mental health if you are just eliminating everybody because of the foods that they eat. Um, uh, it's okay to be friends and family with people who live and act differently than you. And, maybe you don't want to have a deep conversation with someone about the best ways to cook steak, but that doesn't mean that you should, unfriend them on Facebook and stop going to family dinners. It's important to, and also think about the fact that if you cut everybody out of your life, what is that going to do to veganism? You're certainly going to stop influencing them, and on top of this, they're going to think you're crazy. They're going to think, wow, so and so went vegan and they stopped, they excommunicated themselves from the family. Like, what is that? What kind of what are they going to think about veganism then? And so it's really important to try and be, to try and again meet people where they are, even if that's difficult. And I think it's important for the animals for us to push ourselves out of our comfort zone and to be a little bit uncomfortable at times if it is in the best interest of animals.
I think you're right. And what about people that might say, now I don't have any friends, they don't want to be around me because they think I'm weird, right? Um, what would that person, what should that person do if some people are judging them? And what would you say to that person?
Well, I think that over time it becomes way less weird. And I don't think that people really truly believe that it's weird. It's just different than what they're used to. And again, people would rather not be challenged, even if you're not doing it intentionally. People like to be able to just keep on doing what they're doing, and change is hard rather than just staying the same. Um, but I think it's also it's important to maybe make it known that you're vegan, but it's not something you're going to be pushing on them. So don't feel judged. I've been vegan for 15 years, and like 6 years ago, I moved to Richmond, Virginia, and I love it here. And um, most of my friends I have made through playing soccer. And so for a long time, basically all my friends were vegan activists. But now, I mean, obviously, I still have those friends. Most of them don't live in Richmond. My friends here in Richmond I've made through playing soccer with them. And so it's been this interesting change where, almost none of them are vegan, but I still see them on a regular basis. And it's great. Many of them have actually um, moved along that spectrum, started eating a lot more vegan food. They ask me about the food I'm eating, and if they ask me about the work I do, I tell them about the vegan stuff, but I'm not like shoving it down their throat per se. And it's great. And so I've been able to influence them without making them ever feel like like I am judging them or pushing them into a corner and forcing broccoli down their throat.
Right. So, what would you do if you went to a if somebody invited you to a wedding and there was would you and there, you knew they weren't going to have any vegan food and you knew you were vegan? What would you do? Would you take your own food, or how would you handle that situation?
Well, first of all, I'll say for any non-vegans who happen to listen to this, I want them to understand that like situations like this are very, very rare. And that there's vegan food almost everywhere. And most weddings that people are invited to, they often can just specify that they want the vegan option. But let's say in this rare scenario where, let's say you're late plus one and there's not going to be any vegan food, I would just plan accordingly. Like I would just understand that I'm not going to eat when they're eating. So maybe I would just bring my own food, have it in the car. Maybe right before dinner, I would find a time to go to the car and eat real quickly, and then go back and enjoy the dinner. And at dinner, I would just maybe have some drinks, and maybe hopefully at least have a salad that's vegan, and at least enjoy that. So you can always make do. Um, and you know what? Yeah, yeah. I'll leave it at
No,
that.
I love that. I mean, I have friends that ask me these questions about the birthday parties and the functions, and they say they feel very very resentful towards their families. Like they know I'm vegan, and and the only thing they're providing is this. So, how to get past that resentment? Because you seem very at peace. You don't feel. I love that you don't have resentment for other people. Again, you're meeting them where they are. You're being the example, and you have just a very confident energy of this is who I am, and I'm going to continue on being the voice, and I'm not going to be angry at you. How does someone get to that place?
In the very like first year or so I was vegan, I hadn't yet come to this conclusion and come to this peace, becoming at peace for example. I did challenge my friends with unsolicited advice, and I remember talking at my grandmother for hours straight about why she should go vegan. And it was actually this conversation that totally changed things. So I spent an hour talking at my grandma about why she should go vegan, talking about the health benefits of veganism, talking about the cruel reality that farm animals are facing, talking about the injustices that factory farm workers and slaughterhouse workers have to experience, talking about the environmental damage of factory farming. And at the end of an hour, I'm basically done with my presentation. And she says, Johnny, thank you so much for sharing, but I'm not going to go vegan. And it was that moment that I realized, okay, you know what? I got to shift the who I'm focusing on and how I'm doing it, and understand that like uh, just just general vegan activism isn't always going to be effective in every scenario. And so, as far as being, and you know what? I didn't resent my grandma after that. I appreciated that she still heard me out. I appreciated that the fact that she had been not vegan for like 75 years at that point, and that change is difficult, and then she was still supportive of me, and so I kind of flipped it on its head. You can look at everything in the world and be either upset about it or happy about it, but the way you think about it, and with your friends, the example of your friends, you could, yes, be resentful because they don't have a vegan option for you, but you could also be unresentful and just be grateful that they're still inviting you, despite the fact that they think you don't want to have their food. And maybe they don't fully understand the laundry list of reasons why you are the way you are. But that doesn't mean that you have to cut them, or you have to assume that they hate you and they disrespect you at all. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And that there's not this black and white thinking, like that's not all or nothing. Well, I failed. There's an awareness here of learning and growth, which is wonderful. It sounds like on the journey, right? It wasn't like, well, now I'm going to have to, I failed with that one. Now I'm going to get up and do the same thing again. No, you understood, and you're trying different strategies. So that's very powerful, and sharing with the audience that there's no wrong way. We all we all fail, and I don't even like that word. We all grow. We all try and just keep going. Um, so, and a lot of people um, just, I mean, are working on the resentment and don't know how to ground themselves or get away from it. How do you have? What's your self care regimen?
For me, it's important to have interests outside of animal advocacy. If I focused on nothing but animal advocacy for the last 15 years, I would have burned out about 10 to 13 years ago, probably. But I have interests outside of animal advocacy. I play soccer. I'm really into heavy metal music, so I go to concerts a lot, spend a lot of time discovering new music. I travel a lot. I love travel. I value travel a lot. I try and prioritize my friends, and so I have interests outside of animal advocacy. So this really helps me as far as my self care goes, um, and it's also a mindset that I've developed over time is to shift from focusing on the immense cruelty happening in the world, and how it's completely out of my control and how it'll never end and how the world can be a horrible place. I've shifted that to understanding that while things are quite terrible for animals, I can be happy knowing that I've done pretty much everything I can within reason to make the world a better place, and that um, for hopefully many thousands or even millions of animals, by the time I'm dead, I can know, hey, a lot of animals are protected and didn't face the same horrendous outcomes because of my work, and that is what I choose to focus on: the good that is within my control rather than the bad that is outside my control.
Well, again, it comes back to mindfulness. You're very mindful in your life, it sounds like. And that sounds like you I mean, it took some time to get to that place of learning and growth. So, and it's all a
Yeah,
process.
patience. It took a lot of patience and understanding, and conversations like the one I had with my grandmother, where I realized, I had these kind of turning points, and I'm glad that I recognized when I was younger, after going vegan and getting involved with that vegan activism, that it is important to have other interests, and what, it's important to be vegan for the rest of our lives, not the next 2 years or 2 months.
Right. So, would you say in your posting, do you think people care more about? Is there one element that people care more about? Maybe the environment or the health or animals. Is there anything that really stands out?
Well, I speak mostly about animals because that's the most honest thing to me, because it's my key interest, in comparison to these other things you mentioned, and so that's naturally what I talk about. And I think that important for everybody to figure out what is they care about most and talk about that. And yeah, so I think it's important to just luckily people care about animals. People love animals, and we aren't as a movement talking about glasses. We aren't talking about phones. We're talking about animals, and people love animals, and so luckily, we don't have a hard sell. And unfortunately, the experiences of the animals' faces are truly horrendous, and so that gives us a lot of opportunity to talk about the stuff. And it's quite shocking to people that animals have to endure what they have to endure, but that's a big opportunity for us to use our voices for them.
Right. And what about people that get angry? They'll say, well, those people don't really love animals. They say they love animals, but they're eating them. What would you say about that?
Everybody's on their own journey. I loved animals all my life. I talked to you about how even as a baby, I crawled across the room as fast as I could to make sure my mom and I's cat was okay. But I also ate animals for 20 years. When I was 19, I once ate 39 chicken wings in a single sitting. 39 chicken wings. That is the wings of over a dozen chickens in one single meal on one day. But you know what? I came around. I found that there is a way that I can live that matches the compassion I have for animals with the foods that I choose to eat. And so you have to understand that not everybody is where we want them to be, but we have to be patient. And if we're not going to be patient, we are going to be quite unhappy and likely burn ourselves out quite quickly.
Well, how did you ever struggle with guilt? Because a lot of vegans struggle with guilt. Like they would might tell the story of eating those 39 wings, and then they would be crippled for a while.
I mean, honestly, that's part of my journey, and I think that this actually gives me credibility with non-vegans because they understand. I'd actually think that like telling somebody, "Oh, I've been a lifelong vegan," is actually uh, not the best tool for advocacy because then they're gonna be like, "Oh, well, this guy doesn't know how good cheese is. He doesn't know how good bacon is," and so I think it's actually really important to find credibility and to be relatable. And as far as my feelings about it towards myself, I understand that it was just part of my journey, and it was and I purposely choose to focus on the good rather than the bad. And so I am thinking, okay, I had these experiences. I ate a lot of animals, but because I ate those animals, it empowered me to be a better animal advocate later in life. Because I had that same experience where I recognized how good ribs are, how good chicken wings are, and I've still been able to choose this stuff that is cruelty free instead. And so I choose to focus on that rather than, oh man, like I ate those chickens, I ate all these other animals. It's really how you want to spin it to yourself. And I think that as vegan activists, we are more aware of the suffering that animals endure than the vast majority of people. And if we want to, we can be totally justified in moping around all day and just being so sad and and just debilitatingly depressed all the time. But we can also choose to try and live in a way that's meaningful and impactful. And I choose to be impactful as much as I can, again, within reason.
Right. Yes. And very mindful again, right? About where you put your energy, right? We only have a certain amount of energy in the day. Are we going to use it to be depressed or be angry at our cousin that doesn't want to change? Are we going to be focused on that? Or are we going to put our energy into lifting ourselves up like you're doing?
Totally.
So what about the vegan infighting? There's a lot of vegan infighting, and I see that on the sometimes the social media. Do you get that in your forums?
Yeah, you know what? Infighting is a really big problem in this community. Luckily there's people doing something about it. Melanie Joy has a website, I believe it's infighting.org. If that's the wrong URL, just Google Melanie Joy infighting, and talks about the ways in which we can combat infighting. And it's tough because you have vegans are very passionate individuals, and the vegan movement isn't that old, right? So there isn't like centuries or millennia of long established tradition in dealing with this. The vegan movement is fairly young, and so you have you have splintered groups, you have different and I will say that, like, I know thousands of vegans, and I would say I don't know two of them who agree on absolutely every single thing in terms of tactics and so on. And so you have to just accept that we are different and different causes and different like approaches, and we should do our best to empower the approaches that we find to be most impactful, rather than just tearing down others who have approaches that differ from ours. And if you do see approaches that are, you think that they're counterproductive or harmful, I mean, you can speak up to a certain degree, but I think that your time is still probably going to be better spent by focusing on the efforts that you find to be more impactful. and so I choose to not greatly engage in that stuff, and I really try to avoid infighting for sure.
Right. And so mainly you are just doing, not just, but you are focused on the social media. Are you doing any groups or in person events?
I speak. I do speaking occasion events. So I'll occasionally do a speaking tour. I speak at veg fests and conferences. This coming Saturday, I'm speaking I'm the keynote speaker at the Madison Vegan Fest. I do media appearances like this beautiful one here. But I do the vast majority of my impact, I would say, comes through social media advocacy, and I work again to try and primarily influence non-vegans. What little effort or what little percentage of impact I focus on influencing the vegan community is things like this, where I'm recommending to other vegans get how to engage in effective advocacy and effective communication. And earlier today, I gave a workshop to a social media group, a vegan social media group, about how they can use Twitter slash X well. And so I do find there to be some value on getting vegans to use more effective uses of social media and more effective communication as well.
All right, John, I have another question for you. If you, thinking about yourself, what animal do you most feel like you resonate with? Or if they were going to say, I mean, like, what animal would you say is John?
A
I mean,
capybara, 100%.
oh, tell
Yeah,
us what that
for
is.
your listeners, for your listeners and viewers who don't know what a capybara is, they are the largest rodent, and they are found primarily, if not entirely, in South America, especially in Brazil. And they are imagine uh, imagine a squirrel 100 times the size, and they're super super chill, and they are like laid back, and everybody loves them, and they just get along doing whatever they want, and seem to get along with everybody. And so for me, I try to get along with everybody, and I try to, even in my vegan activism, try to reach people in a way that isn't going to like turn people off, and isn't going to, um, you know, have any negative side effects. I'm really trying to get people to win people over in a kind, compassionate way, and in a way that makes me relatable and reasonable and friendly. And I think that a capybara could be described in many of those same words.
Well, I love them because I a lot of times I do nature walks and we talk about the capybara because I ask the little kids, so here we've got a beaver. Who is the biggest rodent, right? And we talk about the capybara. So I always think that's a very powerful animal. And I can see that in you, John.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and you're right. They're much more like beavers than they are squirrels. That was a better comparison.
All right, well, I want to remind everybody to not forget to go to www.all-creatures.org to check out the hundreds of thousands of pages of free resources updated daily, 7 days a week without break, or sign up for our newsletter, which is weekly. And be sure to search vegan churches on our site to find vegan faith-based resources near you. And please subscribe, y'all. And if you know of a vegan resource or church that's not on our list, please reach out to our executive director, Tams, at all-creatures.org. And I would love to hear some final thoughts, John. You've been very inspirational. And again, I love your energy, your confidence, and your journey, your vulnerability in getting from where you are, as a little boy who really spoke up for that cat to where you are now as a powerful voice. I'd love to hear your final thoughts and where people can find you again.
Sure. So people can find me at johnoberg.org. They can follow me on social media at John Oberg, JohnOberg. And my final thoughts are that I'm just grateful that there are so many people in the world who look beyond themselves at the suffering of others and choose to try and make the world a better place for them. And while we aren't necessarily going likely to create a vegan world in our lifetimes, we can each make a big impact, and many of your listeners and viewers are doing just that, and I'm very grateful for them for playing that role in the village that they are. And my recommendation is to keep going, keep being strong at it, and understand that even if you don't necessarily see most or all of your impact, you are making impact. So keep going.
Well, thank you, John, the capybara Oberg. And thanks everyone for watching. And we'll see you again next week. Thanks, John. Bye bye, everybody.
Thank you.